So this morning we've come here to Cheshire and we're meeting Alan from the calf company again. So Alan, good to meet you.
Thank you.
And we're here on a farm as well. And Rachel, you're the chief calf rearer.
Yeah.
And I guess why we've come back, Alan, is, you know, we're in the first week of February.
Yep.
Calving season is about to get started, obviously. And so it's here to learn again about maybe proper techniques, best techniques with managing calves. And I suppose there's always room for improvement, I suppose,
Absolutely.
on farms for how that's
Absolutely.
done. So even a lot of knowledge on it. So I suppose, look, we'll have a look firsthand here. And Rachel, you can explain
Yeah, that's fine.
you're passionate about calves and
Yeah.
you have a big interest in seeing it done well. So it's
Yeah.
good to see it firsthand.
Yeah,
Here,
that's
so
fine.
Alan might just guide us through it there with you.
Fantastic. So if Rachel, you just explain to us, your baby calves come into the single pen.
Yeah,
So all these are new calves in.
yeah, so obviously they'll start off in the single pens, and then we try them in here together, feeding, etc. And then they will start to go in, obviously, your bigger pens, and these will be of 10.
So when the
Yeah,
calves,
10 to 10.
when you move them over, Rachel, at what stage do you move them over? When they're drinking the 2 litres
So-
and they're confident drinking?
So it's
and-
more or less when they've had all their colostrum, when they've been switched over to the milk powder, and when they're doing well, when we know that they're drinking well, they're drinking enough,
Yeah,
and
perfect.
they look well in themselves. That's when we sort of move them over.
Perfect, perfect. I see you've all got calf jackets on.
Yeah.
It's something you do all the time.
Yeah. So obviously after sort of like 30 days-ish, we'll take them off. But as I say, every newborn calf will get a jacket on, especially in this cold weather.
Perfect.
But yeah.
Really important. Calves can't control body heat as babies. They're not until they're ruminants. A grown animal can control its body heat, and it actually produces body heat. Calves don't. So, if you get a drop in temperature more than 10 degrees in the day, that might be up or down. It's a stress factor to a calf. So, if we go back, Rachel, 3 or 4 weeks ago when we had those minus 10 temperatures, 2 days later we had 14 degrees. In less than a 24-hour period, it shot up. So that's a real stress factor to the calves because it's been chilled, and then all of a sudden it's been really cold, and then going on to really warm. What we say is always, if you put a jacket on, especially in the winter months, you know, some people say they don't do it in the summer months, but in the winter months, we always say, as a golden rule, with dark nights, when the clocks go back and we've got dark nights and dark mornings, get a coat on. In the summer, if your shed is in the right area, you can do without, but it's really important. One important thing as well, and if you look at Rachel's, it's a credit to them, they keep the calves really well bedded. I didn't know this. We had an open day with the vet company we work with down south, and we got someone asked a question. One of the vets said, "Do you know where a calf loses most of its body heat from?" And everybody was saying its back, which makes common sense. You thought it lose it for its back. It's actually its legs, because it's got no fat coverage over its legs. So if a calf is sitting in a damp, wet area, that coldness will go in there straight away, and because there's no muscle on there, they'll feel a chill. So. Always keep, calf jackets are perfect, always keep your calves well bedded. On the bedding side, we always do a kneel test. So if you go into a bedding and you kneel down into and your knees are damp afterwards, they need more bedding. And although it looks good, the best money you can spend is by really bedding your calves up well. If it's damp and you've seen these calves, they're all very settled, all been fed, they're all tired and sleepy because they're all feeling nice and full. But if you can see this calf here, its nose is 2 inches away from the ground. So if that area is really wet, it's going to be breathing in humidity, which will give it a bad chest and bad lungs. So keep your straw really dry. Rachel, you've got water for your calves and a little bit of starter niblet pellets.
Yeah.
Do you start that a day? When do you start that?
So
straight away?
As soon as they come in, because they do mess around and they like to pick. So that's why they have the separate feeds and everything and the water.
Water is important. Water is for rumen development, so you can start your calves on water. They won't drink a lot, but the important thing is, if you notice in every bucket of these, it's really clean water. I take it you swap it every day?
Yeah, I do it every day, and
Perfect.
the nuts, obviously, with them, because they tend to just mess about with them a little bit, so they don't eat loads. But they get fresh nuts every day. So yeah, we just keep them fresh.
And as Rachel says, what they do, they'll dribble a little bit in them, and then make them go stale. So a little bit, they'll just start picking at them. That's what you want them to do. You just want them to start off slowly, just a little bit of a nibble of a nut, and then That will come in time. Our target is at weaning to be to at least 1.5 kilos of dry feed per day. And that's the target at weaning. And it's best if they start off slow and build up and build up and build up. And you're ad-lib feeding here, you just keep topping it up every day?
Yeah, so I mean, with the bigger calves down at the bottom, obviously they will get like more or less a big full bucket. But these I tend to just put a little bit in every now and again because they do go stale as well if you just leave them. So yeah.
And you're weaning. What age are you weaning?
About 10 weeks.
About 10 weeks, and they're eating that 1.5 to 2 kilos of concentrate.
Yeah.
And then also it's quite important to keep them on the concentrate because what we want to do once we've weaned the calves is we've got a growth pattern going like that. We wanted to keep it going. So what we don't want is that to go up and wean and drop down and then pick up again. So it's really important, as Rachel's doing here, start the calves off young, get that rumen development start to work, which takes 3 or 4 weeks to get going. Eating a little, you've got hay in your racks.
Yeah, I've started these two off with a little bit of hay.
Just to get everything going.
So they can pick, really.
With the hay, if you're feeding hay or straw is perfect in the racks. If you're feeding hay, and it might sound a bit, but the coarse hay is really good for them.
Yeah.
So if hay that's not too good, so when I say not too good, it wants to be clean, but a coarse hay, long-grown hay is fine. Because what it does, it makes a stress effect in the room, and so they'll eat it, and then it will develop the rumen capacity. But no, everything looks good.
And not silage?
Not silage to start with, not until after the weans. Yeah. And we have a lot of customers put them onto a TMR ration afterwards, which is perfect. But silage, you know, the thing about the silage, because it's a soft product, it won't grow, it will go as a stodge into the stomach, where your hay or your straw they'll chew a little bit. Concentrate is the main thing they want to be eating. And then obviously build up from there, and then silage or TMR mix afterwards. What you will find with calves on skim powder compared to whey powder, because skim powder digests slower, the calves will feel fuller longer in the day. So do you notice this? The calves go a bit sleepier?
Yeah.
They drink the food and then they're content. And and then it comes 3 or 4 o'clock again, they'll be going up and up again. With whey powder, it just digests faster, so you get your calves which won't feel full quite as long. But I like the skim powder. Well, the skim powder, because it digests slower, it just has much more benefit to the calf going forward.
Okay. How often would you clean out the sheds, Rachel, or do you just keep throwing straw on top of it? Or?
So they get cleaned out, I'd say. I mean, it's more or less whenever it needs doing. So it's approximately like 30 days, roughly-ish. They'll get a full clean out. So they'll have all like lime powder for the floor and everything like that to keep everything clean. It'll all get washed out and everything. Fresh straw. I mean, obviously they get fresh straw on top every day. But yeah, roughly around the 30 days mark that it will get fully cleaned out.
Do you ever have a time when you blitz the shed as well? And do you ever have loads of periods when it actually all gets cleaned out, or is it quite difficult to do? Because it's one of the difficult things to do on farm.
Because obviously we always have calves in here, so it is quite difficult. But obviously we're all, I mean, every single pen is occupied at the minute, so it is kind of difficult.
It is, and this is one of the major obstacles. As Rachel said, when you start calves into a shed and they've all been cleaned out, it's 30, 40, 50 days you'll start getting build-up of pathogens. So to get that straw cleaned out as much as you can is dead important. So usually 30 days sounds really good to me. Halfway through, it's milk period. It's been on milk for 2 or 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Got another 3 or 4 weeks to go. Clean that straw out and put it back in. If you can't power wash, lime and disinfect as much as you can. Try and keep the bugs to bay as much as possible. Ventilation on your shed. If we go into ventilation a little bit, so do you find the shed works well on ventilation-wise? Or?
Sometimes it depends what weather that we have. Obviously, we do have the windbreakers up at the minute because we did have like rain coming in. But obviously, we've got ventilation from that end going down to there. We've left that open. We've got sort of older calves down at the end of the shed as well, just because obviously we don't have the sheet up on that side, so they're obviously a bit warmer up here. But yeah, I find it tends to be okay in here, to be honest. Yeah.
What I like about it is that you've got quite tall doors.
Yeah.
So basically it's stopping that wind, and with the windbreak there, well, that will stop that draft. Because what happens with draft it often hits the door like there with no, if you haven't had the windbreak on, and it will shoot in and drop onto the calves because the calves can't produce body heat.
Yeah.
So having the windbreak is fine. Windbreaks are quite good because you can actually take them down and put them up in the summer. So if it's really hot in
Yeah.
here, you can drop them. If it's really cold, it stop that wind. If we didn't have that windbreak there, and I'm sure if we walk to that end of the shed where the calves are bigger and they can cope with it, you'll notice a little bit of a difference. So
Yeah.
with ventilation in sheds, you've always got to look at your height, your insulation, your wind direction. There's a number of things you've got to look at it. Calves, as a golden rule, want to be kept dry and out of draft. Two things they want to be doing. Out of draft and dry, and then nice and warm the way. A number of things you can do. As you say, Rachel's got a windbreak. If you've got an open gate, so say if that gate was open at the front, you've got a lot of drafting, you could put some straw, bales of straw behind it. So there's a number of things you can do to protect your calves. But basic rule, nice and warm, dry. Dry is number one. If it's dry, the pathogens won't breed, etc.
And then back to maybe the people side of a business like this. Someone like Rachel, it's quite common in the UK, I guess it's maybe due to the scale, that you have one person dedicated to calves. And obviously it's a big help if you
Absolutely.
have...
It is, because I think as we went through when we was in the mixing room, Rachel's got the board with all the feeding rates, the mixing rates and which calves are on. So if Rachel's obviously... I'm sure Steve lets you have a little bit of time off, does he?
Yeah.
So obviously on your weekend off and someone else is coming in, you want to know that these calves are being fed correctly.
Yeah.
So if it's all on the board, it's quite simple as long as you follow the instructions. But it's really important to have somebody who's doing the calves all the time. And you'll know, Rachel, you'll know straight away if you put your milk feeder in here and one of these calves doesn't come up quick enough or it's drinking slow, you just straight away
Well, it's funny because I know exactly how every calf should be, and how, if it's ill, can tell straight away. If it's looking a bit down or it's staying laying down and everything like that, I can tell straight away.
So
yeah,
the man management is
better to have
dead
one
important.
person.
Yeah. Rachel, can I ask, I think you mentioned before, you've used automatic feeders in the past?
Yeah, so
I've... here with the manual method, have you a preference or do you mind? Or
Not really. I mean, there is ups and downs to both sides, really, I'd say.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously, it does tell you on the automatic system as to which calf hasn't drunk, then obviously you need to focus on them. But it tells you how many litres that they've had. Obviously, we have a 10 feeder,
Teat feeder
at the minute, 10 teat feeder. So, but yeah, there's ups and downs to automatic feeding, really. I'd say personally.
I would totally agree with Rachel. We've got a lot of our customers are automatic feeders or teat feeders, which is comparable between the two. I totally agree. It's usually the calf feeders are very clever pieces of kit. Okay, the mixing rate, the calves have the visits several times a day. It comes with the drinking speed, so you know straight away if a calf is drinking slow, that calf maybe needs some attention. The issues we find with calf machines is not the calf machine, but it's the environment they're in. And the problem you have with them is that where Rachel will put a group of calves in here, of 10 calves, then they'll move down the system and take it, Rachel, and they'll probably keep in their same groups all the time.
Yeah, they keep to the same groups.
The problem, the issue sometimes you get with calf machines is that you'll have 10 calves in there, which will be 4 weeks, 5 weeks old, and then you're adding a little baby calf in.
Yeah.
Those are the issues, and after a while you get a build-up of pathogens, you get a build-up of environmental issues. So the calf machines are great pieces of kit, okay? They work really well with the feeding plans. The difficulty is the environment they're in. Really, with a calf machine, if you've got you want a building, you want two buildings really, in my view. You need one building that they're in at that time for so many weeks, maybe 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and then you move it all to another building, clean that power out and disinfect and start again.
Yeah.
And then they work. There's been a lot of issues, obviously, with calf machines. And the calves will start scouring, bacterial scours, and again, it's not the machine doing anything wrong at all. The great piece of kit, it's just the environment they can be in. So really look at, if you're going down the calf machine route, really look at your environment the calves are going into and the building it's going into, and make sure, one of the golden rules, make sure you can actually clean that power shut out and start again with calves not in that shed. And that may be having a building that's split and it's totally sealed off from one side to another and you move it over. Number of things you can do, but that's one of the main issues with them.
And maybe just to finish on the building side, Alan. this calf shed here is located adjacent to the dairy,
Yeah.
so there's no major walking across the yard as well, so the benefits of that.
Perfect. Again, you see, as we said before, that's your wet room, that's your wash room, your cooking room, where you do your mixing. In there, you get humidity. Here, we want it dry. What I love about Rachel's here, if you look down the row here, so I'm just standing in front of you, it's dry. I go to some farms, and because I'm coming, they'll start, right, I'll clean everything out, and they'll come down with a washer and the hose pipe and clean it all out for me. And I can say that's just the worst thing you can do. Because all it's doing is putting humidity, which will dry and will come up into the calves. So keep your calf sheds dry, all the time. Check your guttering. It's a really easy one. You know, if your guttering is not correct on your shed and it rains and it's dropping in and into the calf building, bringing humidity into the building. So keep your calf sheds dry. Number one thing. Keep them dry.
And the vent overhead?
The vents overhead, they don't really work for calves as much as they do for cattle. For big cattle, absolutely right. You've got your vents coming in and it pushes up through the top. With calves, it doesn't really work the same because calves don't produce body heat up into the what's it. So not as important. These vents, not over big. You know, on a cow shed, you'll have a totally open vent, which you need to get the air out and what is it. But calves, you don't need it as much because, you know, and also on your building, watch your height a little bit because obviously air will come in through the sides and drop onto the calves. So the lower your roof really on a calf shed, if it's just designed for your calf shed, and this is what a lot of people don't do, and this is what we like about the farm here with Steve and Rachel, is that this is a purpose-built calf building. How many farms do you go onto or we go onto where it's been put in the old cubicle shed or it's been put in the old collecting yard and been used for a secondary purpose? Really think about your calf shed design, from insulated units to calf hutches to what is it. Think about your calf. You know, these buildings should just be designed for calves and nothing else. And that's what I think a lot of people make the mistake. Oh, we've got this shed free now. It used to be the cubicle shed or the collecting yard. We'll put calves in there. Totally wrong. Totally wrong. You know, it's got to be a purpose-built shed. If you do that, you will cut problems down. So. Obviously, Rachel, you said this was your area where you start your calves on. If you want to take us down and say the bigger calves at the bottom.
Yeah, that's fine.
If you just kind of roughly say the age groups.
Yeah, so roughly these are our newest ones. So both of these groups, we have had quite a lot of calf at the same time. So these are roughly the same age. These are anything about a couple of weeks old in these two pens here. These are our oldest, second to oldest beef. So these ones are roughly about 5 to 6 weeks old, ranging from there. Yeah, so obviously this is our second oldest dairy heifer group. So these are roughly about 6 weeks old. And then you've got our oldest dairy heifers here. And these are roughly about 8 weeks old.
So
It's a mixture, yeah.
So as you see with these calves now, as they get from the smaller calves to the bigger calves, they're starting chewing the cud, they're starting to become ruminants. You know, it's good to keep them in the same groups going forward.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Well, Rachel, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
It's a very, very good time. We're in early February.
Yeah.
For those that are about to start calving, I think there's some great tips there for people.
Yeah.
And Hannah, thanks for your information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.